All right, let's make sure we have everything good to go here. And we do. Hi. This is the first time I'm doing a stream in quite a while. And so I don't imagine a lot of people will tune in as I am live, especially since it is late on a Saturday night. I access this and that's great news for me, at least. I hope you're all doing okay. So for those of you who don't know, I'm John Negroni, film editor for The Young Folks, and I'm also the host of the Cinemaholics podcast. It has been a while. So, short second to explain my absence, where have I been? The short of it is that I've been in, well, the busy business of making some massive life changes. As you can kind of see in my background, I now live in a house, which is fantastic. Moving into bigger life experiences, as you can probably tell. And it's really fantastic. I'm still getting the hang of my new life out here and my work balance and how everything sort of fits together. And I mentioned at the top, I've recently become the film editor for theyoungfolks.com, great website. I manage the film section, and I've been devoting a lot of my time, a lot more of my time in these last few months to editing reviews from other people. And that's been a lot of fun. I've been hopefully investing in new voices throughout film criticism. So that's really what I've been up to. And along the way, I have I've maintained my own film reviews. I'm still writing. There are two main ways I still do reviews. I still write reviews for online publications like The Young Folks, but I also discuss new movies too, and I review them in podcast form through Cinemaholics with Cinema Blend writer Will Ashton. So since I've last streamed, which was I have to say, back in February, I think a lot of stuff has changed. I've gotten some really great opportunities coming my way. I'm now a Rotten Tomatoes approved critic, which means that no matter where I write a review, it now counts toward a Rotten Tomatoes score. And as that's happened, I've had to really beef up my criticism. It's a higher standard and everything. And I've been really happy with how things have been progressing. 2021 has been a difficult year in a lot of ways, but also a tremendously opportunistic one. And I'm really happy with how things have turned out so far. Now, what to do about these live streams? They're a lot of work, first and foremost, the way I've done it in the past. And I'm still experimenting with the format that I believe will hopefully suit me best. There are a lot of ideas I have, and I want to try different things. But for now, I want to do something a little different from what I have done in the past. And that's what I'm really here to do now. Rather than explain what I have in mind, I'd rather just jump into it and start talking about Halloween Kills, which is the title of this. Now, I'm a little bit late to discussing Halloween Kills because the studio sort of changed plans for critics to see this. Originally, it premiered at Venice, but we were supposed to be getting screening links to this movie. There were also public screening, or not public screenings, but critic screenings for this movie that were going to be happening earlier this week. We were supposed to be getting a link to it on Tuesday so that we could watch the film, review the film, and have it out when it is out now. But it didn't work out that way. They changed it the day of we were supposed to be getting the links, and we found out that we weren't going to be getting links to the film until Thursday evening. So right before it was going to be dropped on Peacock, the NBC streaming service. So you can stream it right there for the next 30 days starting Friday. So late or not, I wanted to get into this one because there is a lot to talk about. I don't talk about Halloween movies as much as I talk about other ones, but they are films that I have a very deep history with. So to start, Halloween Kills is a sequel to Halloween from 2018, which itself was a legacy sequel to the 1978 Halloween directed by John Carpenter, which is one of the original horror slasher franchises. The 2018 movie, it was a soft reboot, really. It ignored the other, I don't even remember how many, but I think like 9 or so Halloween sequels and reboots over the years. Even Halloween 2 from 1981. There was a time when they had done this before, and they basically said only Halloween and Halloween 2 count. But then even this new reboot starting in 2018 has said no, not even Halloween 2, where we find out that Laurie Strode is Michael Myers' sister. That's all gone. We're not doing that anymore. And I think Halloween 2, yeah, that's 1981. I think that was helmed by Rick Rosenthal, though Carpenter still did the screenplay with Deborah Hill for that. But since then, yeah, starting with Halloween 2018, the continuity has really just been wiped clean. There's no Season of the Witch or the Halloween 3. I forget exactly what it was called, which I have a soft spot for, that anthology movie. There's no Curse of Michael Myers or Michael Myers Returns or anything else complicating the increasingly complicated timelines. And it also did something different from the Rob Zombie duology that we got in 2007 and 2009. Fun fact, when the first Rob Zombie Halloween movie came out in 2007, that was one of the first films on opening night that my high school job, I worked at a movie theater, we played Halloween, the 2007 movie. That's something I'll never forget. That was like the big movie that was playing at the time. But that got a movie, a remake. It got a direct sequel to the remake, which I actually thought was a little bit better. I actually kind of liked Halloween 2, 2009, however you want to call it. And like I said, it rebooted the entire thing from a grittier, more brutal perspective because Rob Zombie. No, Halloween 2018 is not really like that. It was directed by David Gordon Green. He jumped in and continued the story from the original 1978 version uninterrupted. And it had a more focused character story about Laurie Strode, reprised by Jamie Lee Curtis, which I think critics responded pretty favorably to. It's a movie about how the generations of Strode women really have been impacted, carrying the weight and trauma of Michael Myers' killing spree from that fateful Halloween night. And the way it lingers over the decades, much in the same way, funny enough, to the way this franchise just never seems to go away, to the point where even a movie as hauntingly minimal and with such an iconic score by John Carpenter, for me, hearing that score even all these years later, it never stops working on me. It never stops sending a chill down my spine. So I'm always eager to see a new Halloween movie, even if I don't think it's going to be all that great, to be honest. And Halloween 2018 didn't do much for me. The 2018 movie, the 2018 reboot, as a lifelong fan of the first Halloween movie, it just didn't quite work for me as well as it seemed to have for some others. In my view, the first Halloween is the prototypical slasher movie that was suited for general audiences. We had gotten plenty of slasher movies before 1978. I'm speaking as if I was there, but of course I wasn't born yet. But based on what I understand, I mean, there were other slasher movies, but this was the first to really strike a broader chord with the general public in a just a tight, visceral, satisfying package. Despite being such an independently made, low budget film, albeit released by a major studio, it had the bones of a blockbuster during an era when blockbusters were still being born. I mean, this is only a year or so after Star Wars. This is only a few years after Jaws. Blockbusters are still an idea that studios are playing around with, honestly. So all these years later, it's a welcome sight for these Halloween movies to really go back to their more grounded roots, at least in some respects. They're still designed to make heaps of money, obviously, but they're a bit more practical. They're a bit more back to basics, the way that David Gordon Green does it. And the basics being the dread on screen of a broken child of suburbia just wreaking havoc on his hometown. That's really what these films come down to in terms of their formula and how the formula presents itself. Another thing about horror movies that probably doesn't get said enough is the way that horror movies from the 1970s, especially, always had political themes. People tend to forget that films have always just been political. And I really appreciate the way politics are handled in older films. There's sort of like a charming, rough around the edges quality to them. And I see that in this new film as well. That's probably why I end up liking this follow up, Halloween Kills, quite a bit more than its predecessor, which apparently is heresy for some. I don't know. But for once, this movie, one of these Halloween movies, has something to say about the town that Michael Myers inhabits. Not just the rivalry between him and Laurie Strode, which we've seen over and over again, a rivalry that in this movie takes mostly a back seat. As she's recovering from events in the last movie, she's in the hospital for a lot of this movie. And I think a lot of people are dismayed by that in a way. They don't want Laurie Strode to be in the back seat. But for me, it was like, okay, this is an opportunity to do something different with the town, to show other characters in the limelight and not just do the same old thing again, where it's Michael hunting Laurie Strode. That's what we always see. David Gordon Green both directs and co-writes the screenplay. And I'll say quickly, many of his films have fallen short for me since I think he creatively peaked with Pineapple Express, which is his 2008 stoner comedy I'm gonna call it a waster piece, which is a word I just made up. But I do really have a small appreciation for Stronger with Jake Gyllenhaal and Tatiana Maslany from a few years back. I do really like that movie. And aside from it, I'm honestly finding it pretty odd to accept that the same director who made all of these movies, others, like Brand is Crisis, Our Brand is Crisis, Prince Avalanche. It's really quite strange, but anyway, Green's approach to these movies, these Halloween movies, along with his fellow screenwriters, Danny McBride and a few others I forget, but Danny McBride, who also had a hand in the last film and the third one coming up next year, which is going to be called Halloween Ends. Green's approach, I think, is to hopefully try to just conclude and bring an end, as Halloween ends, to the original Halloween continuity and kind of answer the question, what do we do about Michael Myers? And to do that, I think the plan has been, well, you can't just bring resolution to such a larger than life horror icon like Michael Myers. His story can't reasonably be finished in one or even two films alone, which is why I think they decided it has to be a trilogy. And Halloween Kills, is interesting to me in the way that it investigates the psychology of Michael Myers as it really ping pongs between his acts of violence and the victims of said violence around Haddonfield, Illinois, where in the last film it was really about the Strode family. And there was this very, to me, predictable I told you so element of how Laurie Strode is vindicated retroactively for her preparedness in regards to Michael's eventual return to Haddonfield. People are saying she's crazy and all of this stuff about her not being acceptable behavior Michael Myers has done, but it's like, no, she prepared and she gets her I told you so moment and all of that. I think that Halloween Kills has more new content, honestly, for the audience to chew on. It pokes and prods at the idea of, for example, mob justice in response to Michael's villainy. The town hates him, and rightly so. And it's a movie essentially about how violence spreads in many forms when people fall prey to misinformation, which, of course, can have unintended consequences that can easily be reversed. It's a tough message, it's especially relevant subject matter considering everything going on today. I wonder, honestly, if some critics might be misreading the film a little bit as a sort of defense of mob justice. Maybe they think that the film is suggesting mob justice is a good thing. And I think that's off the mark. I do think that Halloween Kills has a pretty clear side on the morality or lack thereof of what happens in this movie outside of the relentless titular killing. I don't think a lot of that is difficult to parse myself, but the film, it really has an incredibly effective cold open, I want to say, in which we get to see a new perspective of the 1978 movie, what picks up right after that, the events of that film. And it sets the stage for some kind of unexpected but pleasantly unexpected cameos of the original movie kind of coming back in this one, which I was happy to see. This is one of the most, for me, interesting and sensational parts of the movie. It's a series of scenes right after we kind of kick off what happened in the last film. It's a bit of a prologue, similar to A Quiet Place Part 2, what that film did earlier this year. And honestly, I almost wish we could have stayed in this time period, at least for a little longer almost, with this grainy film aesthetic that it was doing, harkening back to this very suspiciously warm setting from the 70s that you just know is about to turn cold. There was something very nostalgic about it that worked for me in the limited time we got it. Probably better that it didn't go on too long and overstay its welcome, but I definitely was wanting more, which is not a bad thing. But yes, the film moves on to decades later. It picks up right after the events of 2018's Halloween, a very, very long night, and that's for sure. It picks up moments after the Strodes set Laurie's compound on fire. They think that they have done it, that they've killed Michael Myers, but we, of course, know that's not the case. It's not going to happen that easily. And from there, a ragtag group of adults who have some sort of connection to the events of the 1978 film. I won't give away all of the connections there. It's fun to watch and see for yourself, especially if you have, it's definitely worth rewatching the first Halloween. I don't know if you have to rewatch the 2018 movie. If you already saw it, I think you've got it pretty much on pat. What happens in that movie is not hard to follow. But rewatching the original 1978 film is a good idea to probably get the most out of this movie. But you'll be able to pick up on things. They hold your hand a little bit, to be honest. And this ragtag group of adults, they get together and they're going to try to take Michael Myers down. They chant this really annoyingly repetitive chant Evil dies tonight. It's like the tagline of the film. And I don't know. On the one hand, it's exciting, but also kind of terrifying, for example, to see one of these all grown up citizens played by Anthony Michael Hall. I will say he's in this movie, and he gets an actual character arc that stretches beyond the usual, what we usually see in these movies, which is deer in the headlights kind of thing. And that's not to say that this movie doesn't have a lot of rational inconsistencies of, you're going to see characters in this movie doing things that you would feel like you would not do in a similar situation. It's a big flaw with this movie. It's something that kind of has to happen for story reasons. And I'm not the biggest fan either, but it's part of the movie, and I ultimately accept it as part of the deal, part of the package. And overall, though, I mean, aside from that, it's a different way to do a Halloween movie, what this one does. And I think it's sure to polarize. I can't come out and say that it contributes anything all that meaningful to the original Carpenter film. I'm sorry to say that. It's still a rebranded retread of the same feeling that film innovated. But I do think the filmmakers know that, and they're purposely making a tribute. They're not making art for its own sake, which I'm sure critics are not happy to see, right? But I don't know. I think these filmmakers, they know the audience wants this movie, and they're delivering it in spades. And I think that's going to result in people, fans watching the movie, enjoying it, probably not thinking about it that much after the fact, which is honestly how I engaged with Halloween 2018. And I still enjoyed this one as a Halloween fan, as someone who's watched most of these movies at least once, maybe more than once, some of them many times. And Halloween Kills is oddly one of the ones that I would consider rewatching, more so than the 2018 movie. I think the kills are more memorable. Some of them are truly nasty to look at. I find the underlying narrative of this movie not deep and challenging, but deep and challenging enough, if that makes any sense. At least enough for this movie to be worth revisiting, because I don't have the whole thing figured out. I don't feel like I got everything that I could get out of this movie all in one sitting. And that's a positive for me. That's something that I look forward to in a movie, because, diminishing returns are a thing. And especially for a Halloween movie, I haven't felt that way about a Halloween movie in a long time. Every time I see one of these sequels, I just feel like I got it. And there's not really a reason for me to rewatch. I think maybe since Halloween 3, actually, to be honest. But Halloween Kills, it's out right now. It's playing in theaters through Universal. You can also stream it for a limited time on Peacock. I don't know if you're going to get the full theatrical experience out of this movie, like with an audience. I hope that you would, if you're able to see it safely. But for me, I'll be having a much longer, or I don't know, much longer, but I'll be having a longer conversation about this film and others on the Cinemaholics podcast. We're going to be putting out that episode probably Monday, could be Tuesday. So if you're not already subscribed to Cinemaholics, definitely check that out. That's going to be a longer conversation about everything with this movie. And I hope you got something out of this conversation. It's good to be live again. I missed being live. I'm glad that things are stabilizing a little bit. I am definitely streaming at a time that's very different from when I used to stream. So I didn't expect a lot of people to jump onto the stream. But if you manage to discover this later on, I hope you do. And yeah, I'm always interested to see what people are saying about this movie. What is your little mini review of Halloween Kills? What if you saw the film? My question for you is this. I mean, when you watched the film, what stuck out to you? What was something that surprised you about this movie? I really want to know. Beyond whether or not you liked it, I think that can change. But one thing that doesn't change is your first impression. And I'd like to know about that. So thank you for watching, and I'll be back another time, hopefully to talk about some more movies. So until then, I'll see you next time.